Alright everybody, welcome back! So if you see right there, I just made use of a trick or a feature which has recently come to the spotlight and has been featured by quite a few channels. Off the top of my head, I remember Jube, Defen, and Seek all making videos on it. I'm sure other channels have as well, just can't remember right now. Gaijin has decided to go ahead and attempt to remove it. Now, of course, it is back right now, which is why you're actually seeing footage of it. But if you look at the changelogs for last week, they did actually include in there the removal of this feature. Now, of course, they backtracked on that, and I think it's mostly because they were having issues with tanks not actually having the proper markers, like for allies at a distance. I remember seeing that myself. There were people that were 8 or 9 kilometers away, and they were not showing as allies in the TGP pod. And I could see why that could cause some issues. The problem is, when you look at when they reinstated it, they said temporarily, which makes you think that they do plan to remove this permanently. And I have some big problems with that. If you ask me, this is one of, if not the best features at top tier right now. So if you've been playing the game for a long time like I have, you'll know the spotting system has been a consistent gripe for pretty much the entire time I've been playing. It's gotten better, it's gotten worse over the years, and right now it feels honestly some of the worst I have ever seen it. I will have people popping up at less than a kilometer behind me unspotted, which is unacceptable. And sometimes even if you're looking straight at them, they will sit there and still be unspotted up until 3-4 kilometers. I've had that myself in many different planes and in many different situations. And that isn't just normal daylight, which you see right here. That doesn't even go into the stupid twilight mode, which looks very pretty, but is absolutely horrendous for spotting, right? And now you get a feature which lets you spot everybody in front of you, or in the general vicinity of your targeting pod, for 20 kilometers, not just for you, but for your entire team. I think that's a pretty big deal and a very nice feature. Not only does it help you out, but it actually gives your team an advantage, because now they know where the enemies are. Now they know, if somebody is 6 kilometers away and closing on them and about to fire a missile, they are able to go ahead and get ready for them. And I think that is a big deal. And I think that teamwork aspect of the game really needs to be cultivated, because it is sorely lacking right now. So I really don't see why they want to remove this, and the only thing I can really think of is that it favors vehicles which carry a targeting pod. So of course, the Kurnass 2000 that I'm using right here, and I'll be talking more about this plane specifically later on, actually has a camera built into the wing of the aircraft. The F-14B has the Tiseo, I think it is, the Tiseo. It has a camera built in as well. Most other aircraft that have a camera have to take it in a pod, which does hamper the performance, but it's not a massive deal, and for a lot of people it just comes down to whether the benefits outweigh the downside of the extra weight. Me personally, I usually don't run it just because I'd rather, have the extra flight performance, but you can always just squad up with somebody running it instead if you don't want it personally, and you just don't have to worry about it regardless. And you can't really make the nation argument either, because most nations do have it, and I mean, the ones that don't are just playing with nations that have it anyways. It's not as if we're having nation versus nation matchmaker in the year of our Lord 2024 anymore. It's pretty much non-existent now. I really hope Gaijin keeps it in. I've been putting feedback, other CCs have as well, and I hope y'all say stuff to them as well, just to try and get them to do it. But I mean, hopefully a little bit of pressure will just decide that it's not worth the hassle of, figuring out where the bug is, and they'll just keep it. But unfortunately, knowing our luck, they're just going to go ahead and rush a patch out next week. Now, the Kurnass 2000 itself, it's been a while since I made a video on this, so I figured it was the perfect plane, considering that it actually does have the camera built in. I am a massive fan of Phantoms, especially the F4E. I really enjoy playing them. I've been playing the EJ Kai. You can probably expect a video on that coming up as well a lot recently, and I just had to go ahead and play this thing since it can no longer face top tier, and boy, oh boy. For those of y'all who don't know what this aircraft is, this is a very late Israeli modification of the Phantom. It's not my favorite one. They did make what's called the IAI Super Phantom, where they stuck new engines based on the F-15 engines in there. They lightened the airframe, and it had a thrust to weight ratio that was almost as good as the F-18's, but as a Phantom. So the thing was absolutely cracked, unfortunately got canceled, but they did carry a lot of it over into this program. So what that gives us in War Thunder is an F4E, which if you haven't played it already, the F4E does have the Agile Eagle pack, which makes it much more agile, especially at low fuel. plus 6 Python 3s, plus all-you-can-eat countermeasures, which is just an amazing combination for 11.3. Now, to be honest with y'all, I only got a couple down tiers to 10.3, and the reason you're not seeing it at all is because I got team killed in both of them, which was very fun. But even in these, 11-0, 12-0 matches that I was normally getting caught in, this is still a relatively competitive aircraft. Now, of course, airframe-wise, when you're fighting stuff like F-16s, F-14s, Mirage 2000s, you are going to struggle a bit in the Phantom. That's no exception. It's one of the reasons why you see me running such a light fuel load. I run 20 minutes of gas on the Phantom on every map, not just the small ones, even the big ones. Now, I will stick it in first stage burner, and by the way, if you don't know how to do that, if you're on PC like I am, all you gotta do is just go up 1 tick on your mouse wheel if you have, your throttle bound to mouse wheel, instead of the normal 2 ticks. You'll see you have a lower fuel burn. That is your first stage. It puts out less thrust than the full afterburner, but it does conserve fuel. You just run that with 20 minutes. When you get below around 6 minutes of gas, the Phantom turns into a much more maneuverable aircraft than most people would expect, and you can use that to your advantage even against stuff like F-16s. Now, of course, if it turns into a sustained dogfight, they are going to absolutely tear you apart, but that low fuel performance will give you a turn or two, so you can go ahead and use your 640 rounds of Vulcan to your advantage. Or as long as they don't have large caliber countermeasures, you can also just fire a Python from behind them, because you can bleed enough speed to get back there. Speaking of, the Pythons do have the same flares as the AMRAAM, and so you will see them going through flares relatively frequently. I have had zero luck with them going through large caliber countermeasures. Like, I've had them getting one flared constantly. Now, with the stuff that has the normal smaller caliber stuff, that has been a lot more consistent with ignoring flares, especially at close range. By the way, this is actually a perfect example of that agility you can get out of the F4V airframe at those lower fuel states. Although in this case it is still at 8 minutes of gas, but it's still a decent example. This Viggen was going a bit too fast, but you still see what I'm talking about. One last thing before I go ahead and end the video. I've heard a lot of people saying that this plane can get AMRAAMs later on. I have no idea where that came from. There is zero evidence showing that this thing ever got any kind of radar missile. At the time the Israelis were making this, the F-15 had been in service with the Israelis for a long time, and this was not expected to do any actual kind of air-to-air combat. The Pythons are more for self-defense. This was a ground attack platform, which, by the way, it is very good at CAS and War Thunder as well. But just keep that in mind. This is not going to get AMRAAMs, almost certainly. The radar sure might be compatible, but there is zero evidence showing that it ever actually used AMRAAM, so I don't get why they would do that when they have the F-15 that's already in the tree that can use AMRAAM. Anyways, hope y'all enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, maybe give me a like as well, and I'll catch y'all next time. So, peace, y'all.